Hello, and welcome to part 1 of Intro to Nuclearcraft, where today I'd like to explain how fuel cells work. Hopefully, I'll melt down this reactor, and then I will make it so that it does not turn on. So I'm going to turn it on and melt it down and make it so it doesn't turn on. So I've got two little reactors set up, one just for experimenting so that we can actually see things in process, and one that will build through the series. So the important thing here is these fuel cells and moderators. We're going to talk about fuel cells and moderators today. Now, fuel cells are obviously required to burn fuel, which is nuclear fuel, in this case, uranium-based. The fuel gets inserted into these with cell ports. So if you put it in here, when the reactor runs, when the reactor's on, it will automatically go into these fuel cells. Now, fuel cells also require two sources of radiation. They require a input, which is this lever right here. It's called a neutron source. And when you activate the lever, the source will send a signal to the cell that it's connected to. And this is how it's connected. Like that. You don't actually need that. So you can see that this source is connected to this. Now, it doesn't actually have to be directly next to it. It just has to be in line. So it can be from any direction as long as there's nothing blocking it. Like this one would have to be, obviously, you know, if you had a source here, it's not going to get to that one. It's going to get to the first one that it finds. So for this one, we'll put the sources right on top for now. Put levers. So that's the first input to activate the fuel cells. The second input is another fuel cell. So you actually need two fuel cells for a reactor to run. Now, in order to enable the reactor, in order to turn the reactor on, you need to have a certain amount of moderators. In this case, we're using heavy water moderators. These have a flux factor of 36. You can see it in the green there. Together, it adds up to 108 flux factor. The flux factor has to be higher than the criticality factor. So obviously, in this case, the criticality factor is 102, which is lower than the 108, which we have between these. So what's happening is we put the fuel in, we enable this neutron source to both of these, and then these each will send their radiation to the opposite cell, therefore completing the two sources required. Now, if we have less than the required 102, it simply will not turn on. So over here, what we're going to do is we're going to do two fuel cells, and then we're going to do three heavy water moderators. Now, this will enable it to run. So when we flip these levers, we should see it turn on. Oh, right, it needs a... Hold on. Oh, right, it needs fuel. Thought I messed that up for a second. So let's put the fuel in, and it will consume 2. Now, because this is not getting cooling, besides water, these will melt down. But the important thing to note is that it consumed the 2 fuel, and that it enabled it. There we go, and there's a meltdown. This is because we do not have any cooling whatsoever, besides water, which it doesn't really count. So let's try this again. We're going to make it not turn on. And how I'm going to do that is by replacing one of these heavy water moderators with a lower flux factor moderator. So we're going to use graphite. This has a 10. So we got 72 from the heavy water moderators and then 10 from the graphite block. Now, I believe the efficiency modifier will increase that slightly, but obviously not enough to get over that 102 we're looking for. So we'll have about 85 or so ish with the modifier. So let's cap this back up, and this will actually not start. We don't have fuel in there. We're on, and let's put our pellets in. You can see it's just not doing anything besides consuming the one pellet to fill this one. That's because we don't have the at least 2 sources of radiation to complete the cycle. So we go back in, we change this guy out with the heavy water moderator, we build it. My guess as to why this isn't working is because we got a cell melted down. So this is pretty much going to be the inevitable result from this. The important thing, though, is without the 2 sources of radiation, a reactor will never turn on. So if your reactor's not turning on, that's why. You don't have enough flux factor. So to recap for the flux factor, it is you need to add it up, and it needs to be higher than the criticality factor in the red there. If you do reach the criticality factor, the reactor will turn on. All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode. Next time, we'll come back and we'll learn how to use heat sinks. These handy things will basically allow your reactor to not melt down. So that's going to be our goal for next episode. Until then, have a good one.